Can this software really replace film? Getting that cinematic or filmic look is all the rage at the minute, with so many photographers opting for film or film-like profiles on their cameras. I'm always looking for new and creative ways to process my images to make them look less digital and more cinematic. So when Dehancer reached out to me asking me if I'd be willing to give them an honest review of their software, I jumped at the opportunity. If you've not heard of Dehancer before, it's a film emulation software that allows digital photographers to replicate classic film stocks along with some of the unique characteristics that go along with it to their digital images. That offers a complete film emulation with over 60 plus film profiles. We're specifically going to be looking at the Lightroom plugin today, but it's also available for video and mobile too. A quick disclaimer, Dehancer did provide me with a month's license to test and review their software. However, this video is not sponsored by them. They've had no input in the content of this video, or have they reviewed it before posting. So let's jump into Dehancer and take a look at editing a couple of images. This is the first image that we're going to be looking at. The first thing that I like to do is any basic adjustments to white balance, exposure to have the best starting point possible. So I'm just going to auto white balance, and I've already put a crop on this image. I like to sort the crop out before taking it in because of any vignette adjustments or anything like that. Anything that affects the boundaries of the image, if you do it on the full image and then you crop in, you'll potentially be cropping out some of those vignetting or anything like that. So to actually get the image into Dehancer, what we're going to do is you right click on the image down here, come down to edit in, and then go edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. After that, we're just going to go edit. You have got the flexibility of changing your options that you've got of how it takes it into Dehancer, but we're just going to hit edit. After that, Dehancer loads, and this is what you'll be presented with. So let's take a quick look at the interface. On the left hand side here, you've got all the different film stocks here. And the other thing that you've got is you've got presets here, which are presets that the Dehancer team have put together for specific looks. And you can also save your own looks into here as well. So if you create something that you really like the look of, you can save presets in there to speed up your workflow. So moving around, we've got our settings, restoring the images, undo and our redo. Over this side, we've got different view options, also before and after. So let's have a flick through some of the film stocks to try and find a look that we like. It's probably worth mentioning that on the film profiles box here, can turn the film profiles on and off. If you've come from original, when you come back over, you potentially will have no film stock enabled. So if we turn that on, you have the ability to push or pull process on each film stock as well. So I'm just gonna flick through some of these to try and find one that I like. As you can probably tell, straight off the bat, there's some really interesting, powerful, creative looks from some of these presets. So I'm just going to flick through a few more of these to try and find something that I like the look of. I'm looking for something quite moody because it was quite a rainy, moody day. So just trying to find one that kind of captures that mood. I think we might either stick with Portrait 400 or there was this Fujicolor Superior, which I quite like. No, I'm going to go with the Portrait 400. I think it kind of fits this look really well off the bat. So once you've found something that you like the look of, you can move over to the right hand side here, enhance it a little bit further and get more creative with the look that you want to achieve. So we're just going to be building up a look just to kind of explore some of the features, and then we'll look at some of the presets and profiles that the Dehancer team have put together. Starting at the top here, we've got our source adjustments, which we can just do some exposure compensation, some temperature compensation. I know I corrected a few of those things in Lightroom before bringing the image over, but you do have the ability of doing that inside of Dehancer as well. So your next one, you've got Film Developer. This is where you can play a little bit more and start getting a little bit more creative with your look, with boosting the contrast, your gamma correction, your color separation and your color boost. We're not going to go in too much detail of each of these, otherwise this video will get really long and boring. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of these, but I will drop some links in the description to some of Dehancer's articles if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about each section and what each slider does. After I've made a few tweaks in the Film Developer section, we're going to move on to film compression. So this is how much this impacts the image itself. We can also adjust our white point, so we can kind of adjust that to our taste, and then also the tonal range. So I'm going to pull that down slightly, and then we've also got color density. Next, this is one of the sections that I find really interesting, and that is the print section. And what this allows you to do is to switch between different paper stocks and different profiles. We've got Canon film log, Fuji 3513 print film, Kodak 2383 print film, and also Kodak Endura glossy paper. As with all of these sections in Dehancer, you have so much flexibility of controlling all of the parameters around this. So again, we're just going to leave this where it's at with that because I quite like the tonal range of this image so far. Color head is next, and this is where you can get a little bit more creative with the colors inside of your image. And it works selectively, so you can go through and you can start reducing the amount of yellow or reducing the amount of blue in the image. Same with the magentas and greens, and then also the cyan and reds. What I'm going to do is just subtract a little bit of red and then maybe subtract a little bit of blue to try and get a little bit of a cooler look, going from this moodier vibe that's kind of captures the feeling that I had on the day with it, how cold and wet and miserable that it was. So I kind of don't want to portray a really warm image at this point. So you do have the options of adjusting the shadow tones, mid-tones and highlights, and it's based around the color correction tool used in photo enlargers. Film grain, this is one that I think we're all here for. And what Dehancer does is it does it different than other applications out there. It creates the grain algorithmically. And by that, what I mean is it's not simply an overlay that's added on top of the image. What it does is it rebuilds the image with little granules based on color and brightness detail. So we have some presets in here. So let's just zoom into the image here so you can see what adjustment that's having. So we've got 8mm at ISO 50. So let's try 65mm at ISO 500. So switching between those, you can actually see the difference that the film grain can make. And what you have the option of doing is under custom, you have the ability to set all of these manually. So if you've got a specific look that you're going for or want to create a specific type of grain, you have the flexibility to do that. You can play around with the size, you can play around with the amount, you can play around with the resolution, and then also how it impacts in the shadows, the mid-tones, and also the highlights, and also maybe any color adjustments in there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to the 65mm ISO 500 preset just for this example, because I thought it looked quite cool on this image. And then moving on, we've got halation. It's something that's very prevalent inside film photography, and it's one of the things that helps sell the effect of film. And halation is the reddy orangey glows around bright light sources, the specular highlights and contrasting edges. It also produces like a red glow around skin tones as well, so affecting the mid-tones. So if we turn on the halation, and one of the cool features that's inside of Dehancer is this mask mode. So you can flick through all of your presets to see what's happening in there, but when you're trying to create a more customized look, when you're under custom, if you come into mask mode, what that then does is it shows you what parts of the image the halation is actually manipulating. So just to allow this to show a little bit more, I'm just going to bump up amplification and also the global diffusion, just so you can see the effect that that's having. And if we turn mask mode off, you can just see, if I zoom in on some of these areas here, you can see the extra little bits of halation that are around some of these highlights, some of these mid-tone edges. So now we've got our halation in there, we're going to move on to the bloom. And this creates a similar look that, say, a mist filter has on your images. So I've particularly found it useful when working on either night images, which we'll take a look at in a minute, just to create that bit of bloom. And say I was recently in London and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to put a bloom filter on there. And one thing that was great was the ability to know that I could come back and use the bloom inside of Dehancer, because if you put it on the front of the camera, they're baked into the images then. And if you, after the fact, decide, oh, it's too much, it's too strong, I don't like it, you can't, it's kind of tough, you're stuck with it. Whereas knowing that I had Dehancer to come back to, it was never even a consideration to put it on. So knowing that I could come back and go add bloom and then the same as what you can do inside of the halation. You've got your mask mode to show where the bloom's actually affecting. So I'm just gonna, just so we can see it a little bit more, I'm gonna boost those highlights. I'm gonna drop that limiter and also amplify it just so it gives us a visible starting point. And if I just toggle that on and off, you can see the difference that that makes. Moving on, the next section is the film damage. And this is one of those areas where I've actually found this quite useful in certain images that I've posted to Instagram lately. And we'll edit one of these in a moment. But what film damage allows you to do is actually add in dust, scratches, hairs, all of that good stuff. And in a similar way that the grain works, it's not just an overlay that's applied. You actually have the ability to refresh how the damage is applied to the images. The preset's built in, but you also have the ability to get custom about it. So you have the ability to enable the dust, hairs, scratches, and then you have all the control over how these dust and scratches actually impact your image itself. So I'm just gonna tone down some of these hairs, tone down a little bit of the dust. You have the ability to change the scale of them, so if you want them larger, smaller. I think in this image, I might just disable the scratches and just leave the dust and the hairs on there. But the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna whack on a vignette. So just to darken some of those edges. Coming up to the top here, I've got the before and after. So we've got the before, and then we've got the after. And all of this was done inside of Dehancer. I think you'll agree, it's quite powerful with the creative control that you have over creating these specific looks. So once you're happy with an image, once you've got it to a point that you're happy with, and to get back into Lightroom, all you do is you hit on OK. And what that'll do is that'll take you back into Lightroom where you have your final image. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try another image, and what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to use some of the presets that are built in from the Dehancer team. As you'll see, it's already loaded the settings that we created for the last image. And if we come up to the top of the presets, you have your last edits. And what I'm actually going to do in this instance is I'm going to save this as a preset, add preset. And what that does is that just stores my preset to what I've made. So what I'm going to do is just go back to all presets now, and then I'm going to go up to the top where I can go to the original, where we've got the original image. And then what we're going to do is let's just have a flick through some of these settings that the Dehancer team have set up. And oh, that's kind of cool. Like how moody and blue that is on this particular one. If we just toggle before and after, I think that's a really strong, striking look. But let's not stop there. Let's just see what else is in there. That's cool. I really like the blues in there, really capturing that mood. Even though this is on the warmer side, I think it works really well for this particular image because of that moodiness in the sky. Let's have a flick through a few more. Ooh, some black and whites. That's nice. As you can see, there's so many presets built in here. Got my one that we've just created. And like you see, all of these created by the Dehancer team. And then let's just have a quick before and after. I really quite like that one. Oh, that's really nice. I think I might actually go with that one there. And so again, this is just leaving it as the Dehancer team created this preset, but you do have control to be able to go in and actually edit and play with all the settings to dial these presets in to the exact look that you want to go for. So the next image we're going to look at is something that I'd taken for Halloween. And I'd really got this idea of adding all dust, grain and scratches and kind of really grunging the image up. It's something that I'd already edited, and I was really interested to see how Dehancer would handle an already edited image. So as you can see, it's got all of my Lightroom settings already in there, and we can take pre-edited images into Dehancer, so doing exactly the same thing again. But the goal of what I'm trying to achieve now is to add a bit more grunge texture, just to try and capture a bit more of this spooky Halloweeny vibe. So again, as it's done before, it's just loaded in our last edit session. I'll be interested to see what that preset that I've just saved looks like, which off the bat, I think that looks fantastic. But some of the halation and the bloom is probably a bit strong. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the original, and then let's start adding in some of these. So I definitely want some halation in there because of those lights in the background. That setting looks kind of cool as it is, but again, let's just use custom to drop the global diffusion to try and minimify some of those, and also reduce the amplification just to try and create a bit more of a subtle look. Increase that limiter. So we've got with halation, without, it's kind of not too noticed. So let's pull this source limiter back down. Right, again, before and after, you can see around here, let's zoom in. You can see the difference that's actually making. And the other thing that I was really interested to try was adding some bloom to some of these lights in the background. You can already see turning that on, what impact that has. But again, just gonna go to custom, mask mode, so we can see where it's impacting. Let's pull up that limiter so it's only affecting those highlights. And let's toggle between the bloom and without, without. It's creating some nice blooms around all of these. And this is without a mist filter on the camera. It's all done post inside of Dehancer. The last thing I want to add is some film grain and also some film damage. So I'm going to turn some film grain on just to get that grungy film look within the grain. And then I'm going to come down to film damage, adding some of these hairs and textures in that, just all adding towards the grungy, the gritty, the texture. And if you're not happy with where they're sitting, you like the sizes and whatnot, just hit refresh. You can keep hitting refresh until you find something that you like. In a particular image that I have actually done this with, I was getting some where the hairs and stuff were sitting on the nose, and in reality, yes, they would sit there, but I thought it took away from the portrait. So I used the refresh to cycle through a few more, and I found one that just fit the image perfectly. So let's just tone this down a little bit, scratch down. Let's scale everything down ever so slightly. Once we've got it to where we're happy, we can check the before and after. And I think that just adds such a creative edge to this portrait that suits the vibe of the image that I was going for. Yes, I would have possibly been able to do it in Photoshop, but the control that Dehancer gives you is phenomenal for this kind of thing. Let's take a quick look at a night photo that we've got. You're getting all of that halation and bloom around those. Same with around the lights there and how it's interacting with the boundaries here. So if I come in here and let's just turn the halation off, you can see the difference it's making. It's so realistic the way that it deals with the halation and the bloom on some of these. That's such a massive difference in just a few clicks. Dehancer is also available for mobile, allowing you to get all of the same great features whilst on the move. So no need to worry when you're out and about and you're not at your computer, you can still have access to all of the same great features. So you can snap, edit and post all without leaving your device, streamlining your workflow. You might be asking yourself, what actually makes Dehancer different than a LUT? All a LUT is a lookup table of color values, basically saying this color is that color. Whereas Dehancer is a complete film emulation tool, geared towards recreating the main characteristics of film. There's a fantastic article on Dehancer's website going into a little bit more detail about how Dehancer is different than a LUT, and I'll post a link to that in the description if you would like to read a little bit more on that. Now we've walked through the software, let's take a look at some of the cons. The big one for me is the price. For lifetime access, it's $199 US at the time of posting this video. You can purchase short-term licenses for 3, 6, and even 12 months. But even at those prices, it still can be quite expensive if you are a hobbyist. Unless you're a professional or you can see yourself using this regularly on your images, it's something where it's possibly slightly on the high side. Obviously the work that Dehancer have put into making such a fantastic piece of software, the price is justified, but for the average Joe, it might just be slightly out of their budget. Next up, you can't bulk edit images in Lightroom. There is a workaround around this. If you're using Photoshop, you can create an action applying one of the film presets. I like to try and stick all of my editing inside of Lightroom, so it'd be really handy if there was a way to batch or bulk edit images to apply the same presets across multiple images without having to go in and out of Lightroom, which is quite a slow and laborious way of going through multiple images. If you're editing ad hoc for Instagram or the odd social post here and there, it's kind of not a problem. But imagine you're trying to edit 200 plus images from an event and you're trying to run all of these through Dehancer. Unless you did do the Photoshop method, you would have to open each image individually. This may seem like a strange one, but shortcuts, they're either non-existent or not what you would expect them to be. So say you wanted to zoom in on an image, you have the ability to double click on the mouse to zoom into a predetermined zoom level, or if you're using a trackpad, you can pinch to zoom in and out. What would be cool is if you would be able to, say, use Command and plus and minus like you can in other softwares to zoom in incrementally to certain levels. Because I found myself, as I was editing, I'd try to zoom into the image, and because of the predetermined zoom level, you'd zoom into a point, and sometimes it was either too far in or not enough. So it would be nice to have that happy medium between, or giving you a little bit more control if you are using mouse and keyboard. It's also worth mentioning there's no shortcut for undo or redo. There is a button in the top menu, and I'm a big fan of Command Z whilst editing to kind of undo the last change that I've just made. Personally, I feel like Dehancer is an awesome creative tool for processing digital images. And coming back to the point that we started this video with is, can Dehancer actually replace film? And to that, I would probably have to say no. But after thinking about it for a little while, I don't think they're trying to. Film photography is more than just a look. Obviously that's a huge part of it. It's a tactile feeling of loading the film and winding it on. That not knowing if your shot's in focus and having to wait till you've shot the whole roll before you can get it developed. But this is where I think Dehancer does actually come into its own. It's perfect for those wanting to get a more film-like look to their digital images. Also, Dehancer is perfect for this generation of instant gratification. We don't want to wait for something, we want it now, we want it yesterday. And that's another thing that Dehancer has on its side. It allows you to put the film emulations onto your photos instantly. You can also selectively get different looks for different photos. Whereas in the real world, if you wanted to do that with film, what you'd have to do is to, say you had 10 different photos and you wanted 10 different looks to them. You potentially have to use 10 different film stocks, shooting whole rolls of film just to get these individual images with these certain looks. But again, this is another thing that Dehancer excels at. It allows you to put different film looks to different images. And this is also where I believe that the cost is also justified. But maybe if you're a hobbyist that might use it once in a blue moon, it might not be the right software choice for you. But there's no denying the flexibility and creative control that Dehancer gives you is insane. Dehancer are running a competition at the moment for their Dehancer Colourist Awards. It's a worldwide competition for colour enthusiasts created by colour experts, with a chance to win cash prizes and some fantastic prizes if you're lucky enough to be shortlisted. Closing date for entries is the 16th of December 2024, so there's not much time to get your entries in. You can find more information about Dehancer and the Colourist Awards by following the links in the description. And with all that said and done, I'll catch you in the next one.